Welcome to part two. In part one, if you remember, we developed this equation for this guy who was a magic card collector. And we found out by putting it on the calculator and finding the maximum, we found the x to be -5. And we found out that by putting -5 here, like that, and tried to find out the new price, actually meant that the negative times the negative became a positive 15, which worked out to be $45. So he shouldn't actually decrease his price if you wanted to maximize his revenue. Granted, though, by putting the -5 into here, look what happened. You had 500 cards to begin with, plus 25 times -5, which works out to be 500 minus 125. So he would only sell 375 cards. 375 cards, but he'd maximize his revenue to be $16,875. Okay, now my question to you then is how do I do this on a given question like this, where I've got a graph and I have to use their graphing, right? So first thing I would notice is a couple things. I would go down to the graph and I would say, okay, what do we got here? Think about what we have. This is X, and you can still call this X, right? But remember, this is revenue. Okay, this is revenue, and revenue is in dollars. So make sure that you put the proper units down. So what is our X then? Our X is, in brackets, the number of increases or decreases. This would be the number of increases or decreases, which means you're going to increase by one, you increase by $3, increase by two, you're increasing by $6, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, see how that works? Now, what you have to do is you have to take what you have on your graphing calculator right here and graph it. This is what makes it difficult. Okay, so what do we got? Well, first things first, I would look at this and go, hey, look what we got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like Zoom standard still on the x-axis. Well, let's go to our nice little graph here and say, oh, look at this. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 increments. Ah, rats. So that means all of these increases, if you think about it, are now going up by twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. These guys are going down by -2s. And you got to be careful because you're going to put that onto your wonderful window settings, right? Be very, very careful. Now, the next thing I want you to notice, if you look back onto the graphing calculator, is this. You've got a maximum of, oh my goodness, $16,875. This is obviously not going to be going up by ones. These guys here, look, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 this way. They're not going up by ones because that would be $1, $2, $3, and so on. So as a matter of fact, what I chose is wait, you know that this maximum revenue here is going to be 16,000. Why don't you go up by 2,000s? Watch this. If I go up by 2,000, 2,000 here, that would make this 4,000. That would make this 6,000. This 8,000, right? Look at this. 10,000, 12,000. There's 14,000, 16,000, 18,000. Oh, look at that. The graph is going to fit in here just beautifully. Watch your increment settings, okay? This, as a teacher, I would look at this and go, are you putting the proper increments down? Are you going to put the proper scale values down? Are you going to put the proper graph down? Aha, that becomes really, really important. Okay, so what else should you put down? Well, look at what you have on your graphing calculator. You have a maximum at 16,875 at -5. So, okay, so let's go over here. Let's go to -5. So I'm going to use a different color. I'll use green on this one. -5 is approximately here. Go all the way up to about 16,000, almost 17,000. So right approximately there is going to be your maximum. Now, don't forget that your original revenue was 15,000. When did that happen? When these increases were 0. So guess what? You just gave me the y-intercept at 15,000. There it is, right there. So you can actually put a sister point down. You can start here and count 1, 2, 3, down 1, or a half and then another half, or completely 1. So 1, 2, 3 over. So 1, 2, 3 over, down a half. There you go. That's where this particular graph is going to start arcing. Do you see it? Now you're making a very, very accurate diagram. And this, as a marker, is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some degree of accuracy. You can't just sketch this any old way. You got to give me some degree of accuracy. Okay, so let's keep on going. What else can I put down here? Well, let's look back at our calculator. Notice that this guy intersects, it looks like it intersects way here at the 10. Okay, perfect. Let's go back over to here and we can actually finish this diagram off. There's the 10 right here. So now we can take this arc and we can go with this arc and go immediately, if it wants to draw it for me. Come on, you. There it goes. And finish the arc right there. Nice and neat. Make sure this looks nice and neat. A nice smooth curve. Please avoid things like shading. Oh, we're going to shade it over there because you're artistic. I'm going to actually nail you for accuracy on that. So this to me would be a fairly accurate diagram. I might even say, you know what? Let's clean this section up a little bit more. That looks a little bit nicer. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 points of accuracy. And number one, you've labeled everything, revenue up here, the number of increments over there. I'd say that this is a pretty nice looking diagram. So now let's put our window settings down. Think about our X window settings for a second. We went on our X window settings from -10 all the way over to +10. That's easy enough to do. But the most importantly, look how we're going up by increments. We're going up in increments by 2. Now let's look at our Y window setting. Our Y window settings were down here. Think about this. That would make this -2000. So I'm going from -2000 all the way up to this guy, way, way, way up here. Look at this. Check this out. Way up to this guy right up here, which if you think about it, that's 20,000, isn't it? Okay, very similar to the window settings we had on our calculator. So I'm going to go to 20,000 here, okay, and I'm going by increments of 2,000. Okay, see how you'd have to put that down to match the graph that you have here. That will give you full credit. Okay, I nail students on this all the time because they miss things like labeling, like proper increments and proper window settings. I get you every single time on this, and I don't like doing that. I'd rather give you the full credit you deserve. Okay, now let's go back and start answering the questions. Well, which equation illustrates the maximum revenue? Well, there's the equation right there. Graph with the appropriate window settings, we just did that. Determine the max revenue. The max revenue was 16,875. So if you're going to say this, you have to tell me that 16,875 is in fact dollars at a max revenue. You have to state that. Don't just write down the coordinates because the coordinates mean nothing to somebody who's marking this. Telling me it's 16,875 is where you want to go. Determine the max revenue then, we just did that, and the number of increases or decreases. Well, how would you say this? This is -5. X equals to -5, which means actually, remember, you were talking originally about decreasing these things. That's why this is a negative. You're talking decreases, but you found out that it was a negative, which worked out to be actually increasing the cost by 5 increases, by 5 increments of increases. Oops, I don't know why I did that. Okay, so it's kind of interesting to see that. Now, determine the price. We just did. The price was $45, and the number of cards sold, which up to his dismay, he'd be pretty upset about only selling 375 cards. But too bad, you're making them $1,875 more. So now answer the question. Does decrease in the cost necessarily result in increase of revenue? No, not in this situation. It does not result in an increase in revenue. And actually, if you were to decrease the price down here, look, this is your prices as they are being decreased. You're actually losing revenue. right? Which is kind of interesting. So you're still back at that idea is if you want to raise the price, you hopefully can make more money.